so excited to be here today to share some stories with you about my journey with mindfulness and meditation. And it really starts with the first time that I intentionally said, I am going to try meditation. It was around 2018, so not that long ago. And I still remember very vividly sitting down in my bed. I didn't have a fancy meditation pillow like this. So I sat down in my bed, I listened to an app, put my headphones on, and the lady in the app instructed me to close my eyes, which I was successfully able to do. And then she instructed me to notice my breath. And once I settled into the experience, I was able to notice my breath. I noticed my chest moving out and in. I noticed the temperature of the air passing through my nostrils. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm getting meditation right. But then she said to quiet your mind. And I was like, I'm not doing it right because my mind was all over the place. And in that moment, I concluded that I couldn't meditate. And I actually quit. I gave up. I didn't pick up meditation again until like 2019. But I gave up because I convinced myself that this thing called meditation required me to silence my thoughts. And I said, that's impossible. So I couldn't do it because I told myself I couldn't do it. And I'm type A, I like to get things right. I like to get my checks. Because I concluded that I couldn't do it, I said, I'm not going to do it. But the interesting thing is, I've completely transformed my career. I've gone from working in accounting and compliance to now leading and speaking about mindfulness and meditation, particularly within organizations. And now I've talked to a lot of people about this topic. And that, come to find out, is a very relatable experience. So let me just get a show of hands. Raise your hand if you've ever said or thought this before. I can't meditate. My mind won't stop wandering and racing. I'm not doing it right. Right. Just about every hand was raised in the building right now. And it's a very, very common and familiar experience. So hopefully, if nothing else, you feel seen right now. But it's interesting because a few years ago, I was thinking to myself, I hear this all the time. Saying that you can't meditate because your mind won't stop wandering, racing, I thought, it's kind of like saying that you can't brush your teeth because they're dirty. You brush your teeth because they're dirty. You meditate because the mind races. And that was a very profound moment for me, and I share that with everyone. It always gives a chuckle or an aha, because that's the number one thing that you need to do if you want to embrace mindfulness and meditation so that you can be a trigger-proof leader. You have to first change your perspective on what mindfulness is. And I know this firsthand. I know firsthand how effective mindfulness and meditation is at helping us develop resilience. How many people can use a little resilience right now? These are very interesting times, and we all need something that will help us navigate the change and uncertainty and disruption that happens in our life. So I want to tell you the story of how one of the ways that I really got into meditation, and it actually starts with my dad. So before I tell you about my dad, Rodney, another question. Any wrestling fans? Couple. So fun fact, when I was a kid, I was a big wrestling fan. As a matter of fact, I had the esteemed privilege of attending WrestleMania 3 in 1987 with over 97,000 fans at the Pontiac Silverdome. The big match was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. One of the most infamous body slams in history, as a matter of fact. And also Roddy Rod Piper. He was actually my favorite wrestler at the time, probably because my dad's favorite wrestler was Roddy Rod Piper. My dad's name is Rodney. Hot Rod, so that was our favorite wrestler. As a matter of fact, here's a picture of us at WrestleMania 3. I was about 6 years old in this picture, and as you can see, we're sporting our Hot Rod t-shirts. And it was an incredible experience, but you might be wondering, why did your dad take you, a 6-year-old, to see WrestleMania 3 in 1987? Well, the reason for that is my dad was actually a big, big fan of combat sports. Not only was he a big fan of combat sports, my father, Rodney, was actually a professional kickboxer. Early in his life, he picked up martial arts as a habit and trained so well at Muay Thai and Taekwondo that he competed professionally. And he was bad. He was really, really good. Another fun fact about my dad, he was also an architectural engineer. So just to give you a little perspective of how proud I was as a little child telling people that my dad was a professional kickboxer and an architect. He was a really, really cool guy. But I mentioned the kickboxing because through his training in martial arts, my dad picked up meditation as a lifestyle habit. My dad would meditate every day. And I have very vivid memories of my dad sitting in his bed or sitting in a chair, headphones on, sometimes meditating to music, sometimes meditating to silence, and me asking him, "Dad, what are you doing?" And him saying, "I'm meditating." Now, it's 80s and 90s Detroit, so people were not teaching their children about meditation. And my dad never taught me about meditation, but it was just a part of how he lived his life. And I'm so, so glad that it was a part of his lifestyle because he experienced a lot of uncertainty and disruption in his life. The first big change happened in 1990 when he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Now, he was in his early 30s at the time, and if you can imagine someone getting a disease like MS, which impacts the central nervous system and often renders its patients unable to walk. So my dad went from literally defying gravity to now being bound to a wheelchair. It was devastating for him. It absolutely impacted his mental health. I remember during his diagnosis, he was on antidepressants, and he really, really struggled. But eventually, he learned to live with MS. This is a time where I remember him digging into meditation more. He changed his lifestyle. He traded in his kickboxing gear for swim trunks because swimming was the one physical activity that he could compete in. He also changed his diet. You know, my dad loved junk food and McDonald's, so we went from being able to get junk food to him talking about nutritional value. He started juicing, and he figured out how to live with MS, and after about a year, he totally tapped into his sense of resilience, so much that he was featured on the cover of the United Way brochure. This is a picture of him and my brother, who's now an adult, full 90s glory here. But they did a feature on him and his story and his resilience and the way he was able to restart his career because he had to actually retire early at one point because of his illness. So things were going pretty well. He went from, being depressed with his condition to learning to live with MS and getting back to his fun, resilient, vibrant vibe of a self. But then in 1998, my dad was riding his motorized scooter to the local YMCA for swimming. The YMCA was a few blocks from our house. And while he was riding his scooter, he was struck by a car. Do you know the guy got out of the car, looked at my dad, got back in the car, and drove off, for him to then be hit by 2 more cars?